The Beckham family promoted the image of solidarity, strength, unity, and unbreakability for many years. However, that image has now collapsed in the most visible manner imaginable. Brooklyn Beckham is in the middle of the explosion. According to sources, his wife, Nicola Peltz, and her rich father, Nelson "Music" Peltz, have never been persuaded that Brooklyn should be close to his daughter. What began as a low-key conflict has now escalated into a full-scale family conflict, complete with fiery declarations, legal correspondence, communication breakdowns, and a boundary that might never be crossed. And this is the most unsettling question that looms over everything. Is Brooklyn Beckham acting on his own initiative, or has he become completely enmeshed in the Peltz world? Because a much deeper power battle is taking place beneath the emotive statements and Instagram posts. When Brooklyn publicly betrayed his parents, it was the tipping point. He accused David and Victoria Beckham of manipulating narratives, music putting their brand ahead of family, and consistently insulting his wife in a long and emotional social media post. He didn't modify his tone. There was no room for interpretation. In his words, Brooklyn made it apparent that he had no desire in making amends and that he was picking Nicola. The accusations themselves weren't the only thing that startled folks. They sounded so definitive. Not a single olive branch. No, we're trying. Just a clean break. Furthermore, people close to the Beckhams claim that the post wasn't unexpected. Something occurred behind the scenes a few days prior to Brooklyn's public debut. According to reports, David and Victoria Beckham wrote a private message to their son personally, without using social media or middlemen. Why? As there was already a total breakdown of communication. According to reports, Brooklyn sent his parents a cease and desist letter telling them to stop talking about him in public and to only speak with solicitors. The Beckham family was taken aback by that action alone. However, they were more afraid of the person they thought was responsible. According to sources, the Beckhams suspected that Nicola and her parents had a significant effect on Brooklyn's legal scheming. It was said that David and Victoria's letter was intensely personal, passionate, and worried. It was merely a request for their kid to show them that he was all right, not an angry or defensive statement. It appeared to drive Brooklyn farther away, rather than ease the tension. The public takedown came a few days later. At last, he was advocating for himself, according to Brooklyn. The notion that Nicola is in charge of him, he claimed, is wholly incorrect. He said that for the majority of his life, his parents had dominated him. However, this is where public opinion diverges. Brooklyn claims to be free, yet every action he has taken since severing his relationship has brought him closer to the Peltz family. He is said to exclusively connect with his parents through middlemen, lives in their sphere of influence, and interacts with them. And that has led to an increasing perception that this is more than just family conflict. It concerns which family is in charge. The wedding, more especially the now famous dance, is the one occasion that people consistently return to. According to Brooklyn, his mother stole his first dance with Nicola. He claimed he was humiliated by the incident. He claimed that Nicola ran out of the room crying. One thing is constant despite the variety of perspectives. That instance came to represent everything that followed. Those present claim that the energy changed right away. What should have been a time of camaraderie became a permanent hurt when the celebration broke down. Even those attempting to maintain objectivity acknowledged that the dance was about emotion, limits, and perception rather than merely music and timing, and it seems to have been the last straw for Nicola. According to sources, Nicola made her stance very plain after the wedding. People close to the incident said that Brooklyn was informed that he could not have both his mother and his wife in his life. Brooklyn made the decision to go with Nicola. Since then, family functions have reportedly been missed, communications have been cut off, invites have reportedly been turned down, and insiders say Nicola has stayed steadfast in her refusal to go to any event where David and Victoria are present. Depending on your stance, you may see that as manipulation or self-defense, but the outcome is indisputable. Now, Brooklyn Beckham has virtually no connection to the family he was born into. The most influential character in this tale hardly ever talks, despite Nicola taking front stage in public. Nelson Peltz, her father, is a millionaire investor, a powerful figure in business, and a man used to leverage, control, and structure. Furthermore, he has reportedly never been all that impressed with Brooklyn. According to sources, Brooklyn's career aspirations have been quietly rejected by Nelson Peltz. From cooking to photography to lifestyle branding, they are perceived as aimless and careless. Just chilly skepticism, no open conflict, no public insults. And it matters when a billionaire man is not persuaded by you. Brooklyn now lives inside the family ecology, especially since that man controls it. However, there's more information that heightens worries about Brooklyn's future. A rigorous prenuptial agreement was signed before to the wedding. The Peltz wealth would not be available to Brooklyn. He would only take everything they had created together if the marriage ever ended. According to reports, the Beckhams were concerned about the deal because of dependency rather than money. Brooklyn would lose more than just his wife if his marriage failed after he cut off contact with his parents. His whole network of support would vanish. And ever since, David and Victoria have been plagued by the fear that their son has completely entrusted his future to someone else. Those close to the Beckhams maintain that the door is still open in spite of everything. They claim that Brooklyn would be welcomed back right away by David and Victoria. No requirements, no need for a public apology. However, Brooklyn has stated his position. He doesn't regret anything. He feels justified in leaving since he thinks he told the truth. His siblings, meanwhile, carry on with their lives, careers in the future, publicly supportive parents. With the exception of one lost component, the family machine is still operating. Brooklyn. People who knew him long before Nicola and long before fame hardened into family politics are now speaking up, despite Brooklyn's insistence that he is at last free. Furthermore, none of the parties involved are flattered by what they are saying. Hollywood was hardly one of the most surprising voices to comment on this conflict. It originated in football. Brooklyn's former QPR youth coach publicly expressed sympathy for him, but not in the manner that many had anticipated. He was impartial. He didn't stand up for Victoria and David. He also didn't commend Brooklyn for her decisions. Rather, he recounted a childhood molded by stress, worry, and an odd dynamic that most people could never fathom. He described a 14-year-old Brooklyn who was surrounded by constant security, discussed situations that felt quite disturbing even, to someone accustomed to working with children of famous parents, and about how fame and fortune did not equate to stability or happiness. The message was apparent, even though he refrained from placing direct blame. Brooklyn was fragile since he didn't have a typical upbringing, sensitive to control, susceptible to influence, and susceptible to thinking that the only way to survive was to completely retreat. This is where the story starts to feel awkward, because one thing is evident when emotion is removed. Nicola didn't abandon her world to become a part of Brooklyn's. Brooklyn joined hers, leaving his. She stayed in touch with her family. She maintained her network of support. She continued to be financially independent of him. Conversely, Brooklyn isolated himself from his parents, lost access to the musical family structure of his childhood, and linked his emotional destiny to the Peltz household. Observers are concerned about this imbalance. It's not because Brooklyn is weak or Nicola is bad, but rather because loneliness has great power. Additionally, someone's effect becomes unquestionable when they become your sole emotional support system. Nelson Peltz hasn't made any public statements, even though he's been in the news. No justifications, no denials, and no defense of his son-in-law. Furthermore, quiet is rarely an accident for someone as strategic as Nelson Peltz. People who know his world characterize him as decisive, direct, and unimpressed by appearance alone. According to reports, he sees Brooklyn as unfocused, a young guy who is still figuring out who he is while enjoying the advantages of having a well-known last name. It might not be a fair perception, but when it comes to power, perception counts. Additionally, insiders claim that as Brooklyn's music feud with his parents has intensified, Nelson's skepticism has only grown. Because in elite circles, severing ties with your family is not seen as a sign of power. It appears to be unstable. Brooklyn's professional identity is another element subtly influencing this conflict: culinary, lifestyle branding, and photography. Every change has garnered criticism from the general public, as well as allegedly private skepticism from the Peltz family. While David Beckham used unwavering discipline to build an empire, Brooklyn's journey has been uncertain, erratic, and unfinished. This difference is significant because conflict is unavoidable when one family prioritizes outcomes and power, while the other prioritizes legacy and tenure. Additionally, insiders claim that Nelson Peltz has never been persuaded that Brooklyn has sufficient financial, strategic, or symbolic value. According to people close to David and Victoria, the change in Brooklyn took time. They claim that it started when he began postponing choices, communications got filtered, and intimate conversations unexpectedly included solicitors. They maintain that their kid didn't always see of himself as controlled, didn't always cast them as villains, and didn't always speak in this manner. Even if Brooklyn completely disputes the story, the timing cannot be disregarded. He wandered more and more as his marriage deepened. Who hasn't joined this feud is one of its most revealing features. Brooklyn's siblings, music, have continued to live independently without severing links, support one another in public, and post with their parents. The idea that Brooklyn's circumstances are particular rather than systemic has been reinforced by this disparity. This poses an awkward query. Why did just one child leave the Beckham home if it was really as controlling as Brooklyn says? Brooklyn has been commended online for advocating for himself. However, insiders claim that the cost has been catastrophic behind closed doors. No unplanned family get-togethers, no informal check-ins, and no safety net. These days, every exchange is formal, censored, and meticulously controlled. Rebuilding a relationship becomes much more difficult once it reaches that point. The majority of celebrity family dramas have a well-known plot: reconciliation, quiet, shock. This one doesn't, since it's structural as well as emotional. One son torn between two strong families with conflicting ideologies. Additionally, it seems more permanent the longer it lasts. This is the question that looms over everything. What would happen if Brooklyn decided to change his mind? Because when you feel good about yourself, it's easier to walk away. It takes humility and forgiveness on both sides to come back. Furthermore, not all of the parties involved are allegedly amenable to reconciliation. Even though David and Victoria are, would Nicholas be in favor of Brooklyn getting back in touch tomorrow? Would Nelson Peltz, or has the boundary already been crossed? The Beckham family currently lives in two distinct realities, one standing firmly apart, the other going forward together. Brooklyn maintains that he has no regrets. The Beckhams are adamant on waiting indefinitely, and Nicola continues to be the focal point, present, steady, and unshakable. Depending on your point of view, she may be subtly manipulating the story or defending her marriage. However, one thing cannot be disputed. Brooklyn Beckham's life has drastically changed, and there might not be a simple solution.